Yeah. This meeting is being recorded. All right. So what we've been discussing for the past few weeks at length is the idea of how we make our life like real and meaningful and therefore fulfilling for us in a way that sometimes it's not. And we spoke last week about some of the stuff we can fill our day with that seemingly should feed us, but in the end really doesn't. Like there's a lot of shortcuts that don't work. You know, we're American. We're raised to want it easy. Someone was saying to me how just divorce is so prevalent, you know, like why is divorce so prevalent? You know, that question. And, you know, obviously there's many answers given, and, you know, obviously some things cannot, you know, certain situations, there's a reason God allows divorce. You know, this is not Catholicism. But one of the ideas suggested is that, like, you know, people nowadays they don't know how to work anymore. So sometimes when things are hard, they just are like, okay, fine, we're done. Because how do you work? So that same approach also affects the quality of our life and the quality of our day. Meaning, like, a lot of times things seem, this is the easier way. This is the way that I think is supposed to make me feel good. And if it doesn't, I don't know, it's sort of like, I guess I just didn't have enough. You know, there's a expression in Hasidic thought. 3 things impact, and if they don't impact, you just didn't have enough. Liquor makes you drunk. Mashka makes you drunk. And if you're not drunk, you just didn't have enough. If you're Russian, you need a lot. But in the end, it'll work. And money makes you crazy. And if you're not crazy, you just don't have enough. And Hasidus makes you godly. Or you know, God. And if you're not godly, you just didn't take enough. So a lot of times along those same lines, we're like, wait, this is supposed to work. And if this isn't working, I guess I just don't have enough. So instead of trying other roads, we just try to have more and more and more of the same things that aren't working. And that's why we need to keep doing what doesn't work. And again, also a lot of times because we know there's a lot of truth in Judaism, and we know there's a lot of healing in Judaism, and we know there's a lot that makes our life meaningful in Judaism, but then some people have a lot of bad experiences. Some people have been really burnt when they were younger. Some people maybe in schools have bad experiences. Some people maybe in communities have bad experiences. And because of that, that's sort of like colors how they look at everything, or it's sort of like an easy like escape route. Well, you know, this is how they treated me. This is how they treat me. You know, that whole feeling, which was sort of like, therefore done. It's like sometimes when I see if people have a bad relationship to their parents, and that's their triptych out of Judaism, and I'm like, just because you didn't get on with your parents, like, you don't have to carry that over to God. You know, like, you have a bad relationship with your father, relationship with your mother, doesn't mean you have to make it also a bad relationship with God. Like separate. So just because the school you were in was not the most respectful, or the most kind, or the social scene wasn't the most respectful, people are flawed. It doesn't take away, you know, everything that God is for you and wants to be for you. It's just amazing when people make that effort. I had a very inspiring experience yesterday. I went for the Sefer Torah to Springfield, but at the same time, my daughter-in-law got me and my mother together. We did this together to do a nice little mitzvah. And there was a woman who agreed to go to mikvah. And she's so old. She's in her 70s, but she's terrified of water. Yeah, that's like the best. No, that's the best time to get them to go. Easiest. No, because if you did not go to mikvah, every time you and your husband are together, it's a sin. And when you go to mikvah once, if you're past menopause, you're kosher forever. Yeah, it's the best time to get someone to go. I'm not best time, obviously the best time, anytime you get someone to go. But I'm meaning the easiest. It's the easiest time. And I've done this, thank God, with a lot of women in that age and state. I mean, they're going to be in their 70s, they'll be for some people in their 50s, and for some people in their late 40s, and for some people in their 60s. But when you do it, then it's like one time, and then like they're kosher forever. It's amazing. The way to convince someone to do this is parenthetical, but it's so important. I'm going to take this parenthetical little step. Is explain to them the enormous blessings it brings in two areas: their children and their marriage. So when they're younger, you know, maybe 40s, 50s, it could be more their marriage. But for sure, when they're older, it's children. It's a very amazing thing. It's actually an innovative thought of the Lobster Rebbe, because a child born without mikvah is essentially damaged. There's tremendous damage for a Jewish child to be born without mikvah. But when you go to mikvah, anytime that mother will go to mikvah afterwards, retroactively, this brings the blessings of mikvah to that child. So if any woman speaks to me with problems with her children, mikvah. Problems with her married life, mikvah. And if she's 55 plus, or depending on her age and her health and her stage, it's like one time and it's forever. But even if one time and then afterwards she still, you know, has her cycle and therefore has, you know, is no longer kosher with her husband, but she still brought the blessings for her children. And those blessings are forever. Dina. No. No, for her children. It gives her children the blessings as if they were born with the sanctity of mikvah. It does not repair anything that happened in the marriage, but it brings the blessings of mikvah to the children.
Mrs. Charing,
Simcha?
Can you repeat the question that is asked?
Yes, what Dina said was, you know, once, you know, it's like we say you give a finger. So I said that this brings the blessings retroactively for the children. And Dina asked if it also brings the blessings retroactively to the marriage. And I said, no, no, but it does bring it to the children. Hi, Anna. Thanks. You were glad you were able to join us.
Thank you.
Okay, that was PS. Why am I saying that? That was because someone in this room needs to hear it. So whoever you are, I'm glad you heard what you were supposed to hear, and you're going to move it forward and help another family, child, woman with that. The reason I was bringing it in was just for this woman, it was very hard. She's older, she's not old, but it's more she had tremendous fear of water. And the two combined made it very difficult. But she kept pushing herself. She kept pushing herself. She kept pushing herself because she knew she wanted this connection to God. She wanted to bring this blessing into her life. And it was so beautiful to see her stamina and her endurance until she did it. It was not easy at all for a long, long, long time. And she kept pushing herself and pushing herself because she knew she wanted this blessing. She wanted to bring God into her life, into her marriage, into her child in this way. And of course, to us, I mean, you know, we lead religious lives, but sometimes it gets a little blurred, those lines of how sometimes when we make that extra effort to bring God in, it changes things. It changes things, and it's worth the effort. The effort could be extreme sometimes. This was extreme effort. It's worth the effort. So we were talking about this idea of doing things that we think should feed us and don't. That was last week. So what are the things that we can do that really are going to help us in a meaningful way? So when I was thinking this over quite a few weeks ago, I was preparing this one-time class, I felt there are 2 points. Now, anyone can feel free to add to these points. Again, my question is, we know when we're eating, like Shira gave a great metaphor, when you fill your gas tank with water. I really like that. You filled it up, but the car's not moving. So when we spoke last week about all the things we do to fill up our day or fill up our life or making us feel good, and they don't work. That was putting water in the gas tank. So how do I get gas in the gas tank? So I felt there's 2 things. It has to be intrinsically meaningful, and I have to value it as meaningful. I thought both of those things have to be in place And then when we do put the real gas in the gas tank, we move. Meaning there's lots of things that are intrinsically meaningful and you do them and it's like, whatever. And we can value things that really aren't intrinsically meaningful. And therefore it doesn't help. I'm doing it all day long and it doesn't help. But I felt when we have both qualities, when I can really value what's meaningful and then do those things that are meaningful and I value them as such, then I'm leading a life that I know is feeding me. Meaning? So like we were saying last week, the person who is the Joneses. So this person, the Jones incarnate, has been spending her life successfully shopping for 20 years. And she feels good because she looks good, and that is a high absolute priority. She has totally bought into the objectifying culture we live in. No, it can't ever feed you because it's nothing. Nothingness can't feed you. Like you said, water doesn't feed your gas tank. Junk food is not going to give you the sense of, I ate, I'm full, I have energy. So you can't live a life where your reason for being and your success is in your shopping and then truly feel good on the inside, truly feel whole on the inside, truly feel satisfied on the inside. I think sometimes what happens with a lot of people in this world is we are all acting. We're all acting and we're all so good at faking it. You know, I mean, how many of us know people that have it all together? Amazing. Look at their Facebook statuses, look at their WhatsApp statuses. Amazing, great life, great marriage, great kids. And then boom, you hear, oh, they just got divorced. Ever happened to any of you? Yeah. Yeah, thank God not often, but yeah. So what's going on? They had it all. Well, that's what they wanted you to think. Literally to this degree, I mean, it sounds crazy, but I had a student in 12th grade. And when her parents got divorced, she was absolutely shocked. And she had always said consistently, she was my student since 9th grade. My parents have the best marriage in the world. Yeah, I'm not blaming the fact that they hid it and the kids didn't have to see it. That's not my point. My point is, you can hide if you want to, if you care enough to hide it. It's literally, unfortunately, someone I knew very well. They hid it very well. Yes, there's an advantage to hiding it, 100%. But my point being, when you look at someone else and you're like, no, she has a great life. She's so happy. And what does she do with her life? I don't know what she does all day besides go to the gym and shop or whatever. Obviously, we all have other things we do. But you know what I'm saying? Give me these extreme examples. She has a great life. She's so happy. I say not. Not if she's Jewish. Not if she's a Jew. If she's not, it's a very basic thing. I once read this years ago from the Rebbe, and it struck me very strongly. The Rebbe, and I'm sure I've quoted it before, because to me it's like it's such an axiom. The Rebbe says, what does everyone want in this world? Everyone wants happiness. That's what people want. They want to be happy. And the Rebbe says, what creates happiness? The Rebbe said, you might think there's an interesting definition of happiness. If I would say to you what creates happiness, you might give me a different definition. So give me the wrong definition or a different definition. I don't know, wrong. There's no wrongs here. But what would you say if someone said to you, okay, what's going to create happiness? I'm putting you all on the spot.
Relaxed day.
A relaxed day and a good night's sleep. Self-fulfillment. What's your happiness? No wrongs, because none of these things are wrong. I'm just giving you a different answer. Nothing crazy, no stress, no challenges. Okay, so I have 6 people out there that are clueless what creates happiness. Whoa, this is scary, guys. Gratitude. Gratitude. I like that answer. Gratitude creates happiness because when you're grateful, you are happy.
Mrs. Sharon,
Yeah, Simcha.
Shalamis and I were happy because we studied a sikha for the parsha yesterday in my backyard.
Oh, so this is 3 components: being with a friend in the beautiful outdoors and studying God's Torah. That's a specific example, and it's a nice thing that makes you happy, but I want to decontextualize. So we got self-fulfillment, which we agree with. We got gratitude, which I think is a very strong road, and we always push that one. We got a normal night's sleep and a stressless normal day, which I think sounds awesome. Content. Any other ideas? Tools to make you happy. We would like to have some tools. That's hopefully some of the things we've been given over these years. That's for sure. We need those tools because, as we're saying, in our world, we're not really trained. We really don't have those tools. That's very, very deep point of what's missing in just the society. If we want to blame the society, we are not given those tools. We are not. And especially because I would say all parents, and all Jewish parents, all parents, we want to make things easy for our kids. We want to take care of our kids. We want to give our kids a good life. All of which is good and all of which we should do, but at the same time, sometimes in that process, we also miss the tools. Helping another person, for sure. That definitely gives the specific gifts of happiness. Pay attention in case you were wondering how you can walk that road. Anyone else? Okay. That's the Rebbe's point. You hit it. I didn't think anyone was going to hit it. The Rebbe calls it, but this is what Esther's saying. And honestly, I have a friend who said to me, I mean, of course, everyone else when we go to Israel, we feel it. You like feel it in the air. I remember when we were there, I mean, I haven't been there for like 20 some years, and the merit of I learned there for Israel for 2 years. I was young. Then maybe 20-ish, I don't remember, maybe 10 plus years later, I went there for my brother-in-law's wedding. And then like 20 years after that, I got to go there for my own son's wedding. That's about, that was for my son's wedding. That was for my son, who's now living there. That's what happens. Even if they make commitments initially, they will say in America, trust no commitments. Anyway, so when we were there for my son's wedding, I remember my husband saying that even though how did he call them? I forget the term. Even those just people that wander around the shul doing nothing. You know what I mean? Those he says they're different in Israel than in America. And then a friend of mine, when she was in Israel for I think she got to be 2-3 weeks, 2.5 weeks maybe. She said when she came back, even when she was in the airport, wherever they stopped, she looked around and she felt, I'm looking at the walking, living dead. She said, I was there. That's life. Everything I'm looking at, they're all just dead. So you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. So the Rebbe's terminology, which is exactly what Esther just said, calls it menuchas hanefesh. Menuchas hanefesh. Inner peace. That space of you're in your space. Your soul's in your body. And then the Rebbe says, but again, that doesn't take away what anyone else said, by the way. I think there's none of the things I said was not 100% true and 100% things to look at as tools and roads to happiness. The Rebbe is telling this that when a person truly is at peace with themselves, that's happiness. Might not be our definition of happiness, but if you think about it, that's happiness. And then the Rebbe said, and for a Jew, the only way to that is through serving God. Only way. Not for a non-Jew. You can have very spiritual non-Jews, but for a Jew, this is our road. Each person can have a different road within Torah mitzvahs, but without Torah mitzvahs, a Jew can never be, they could be partially happy. With any of the things that were said today, like my mother said, self-fulfillment, self-achievement, that's a really strong, obvious road to happiness. It's a good road to happiness. If you set yourself a benchmark that's really hard and you work really hard and you persevere and you attain it, whoa, an amazing feeling, right? It's an amazing feeling. But for a Jew, even when they have that amazing success, or as Shira said, which I think also is a universal, especially for Jews, but really universal sense of happiness, is helping someone else, giving to another person, making another person happy. I can't think of anything that gives me more of a high than knowing I help someone else. And that's how we're all wired. At least every Jew I know was wired that way. But even at that moment, when that Jew is helping someone else in a real way and they feel great, there's a piece that's still not satisfied. Why? Because in essence, every one of us, let me get you to know yourself, is a soul. We're souls. We're souls and bodies, and we're souls. And as a soul, the soul is never going to be happy if you're not connected to God. So even if you are truly working and creating self-fulfillment, you are achieving, and you don't have a lot of pressures on you today, and you're giving to someone else, and you're grateful for all the good in your life. So we just did a whammy of 4 things, all of which are true. There's still going to be a piece of you that's discontent. You know, people at least have this concept in Judaism, like by the chuppah and we smash the glass, right? Of course, and we know it's Zecher for Churban, or people that don't paint a piece of their house, you know, Zecher for Churban. It's truly how we're wired. Even if all these things are in place, there's a piece that's always going to be like that little Churban inside of you, because the most core essence of you is not being fulfilled because you're not connected to God. And that's it. It's bottom line, and there's no way to escape it. Which doesn't mean you don't know how to cover over it, and you can't tell yourself, well, everyone's sort of like that, and everyone that's happy is also unhappy at the same time. That just means I'm a 21st century person, right? Like, you know, someone's truly happy, someone's truly content, someone truly feels absolutely good. Yes, they don't think so. They just think that doesn't happen, but it does. It does. When you have that real relationship to God, it does. So all of this is going back to Shira's question. So someone who really finds achievement in the shopping, and achievement in the exercising, and achievement in how good they look, and convinces themselves they're really happy, underneath that they're not. Bottom line. Because their soul is still in pain. Oh, for sure, it doesn't last. Right. Well, then you go back to Nordstrom's. There's always the cure. But I'm saying even someone who's doing that, which was Shira's point, is so it didn't last, I do it again. It didn't last, I do it again. But still, even at that moment, when you've acquired the new great thing that everyone's going to be like, whoa, it's still underneath that. You're not happy. And that's what's compelling you to keep going there, because you don't know anything else to do. It's like there's an interesting phrase from Isaiah, from Yeshaya. He says, say it in the cube, Hoi called Sama L'chulamayim for Israeli connection. Whoa, whoa, all who are thirsty, go drink water. And the question is, this is recorded in the prophets. I could tell my kids that also. You're thirsty, go take a drink. You know, what are you making crazy for? Whoa, all who are thirsty, go drink water. So what did he mean? So what the sages say is, you're thirsty. You're a Jew. You know you're thirsty, but you have no clue what to drink. So you might think you need a career, and that's what you're thirsting for. You might think you need to go to India and attach yourself to a really cool spiritual cult, and that's what you're thirsty for. You might think you need feminism or politics, and he says, you're a Jew. You're thirsty. Go drink water. Water is Torah. That's what you're thirsty for. You're a Jew, that's what you're thirsty for. And anything else is not going to quench your thirst. He said this a long time ago, and it's still really, 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 really true. So things that are meaningful and I value as meaningful. Because I can give a lot of things that are meaningful, but if you don't value them as meaningful, even when you're doing them, you're sort of fighting it. Because like, okay, I'm supposed to do this. Like a lot of good things we do. I came up with a list, but I just to start people off. Meaning, my point meaning, like going back to Shear's point, I value impressing other people. I value making lots and lots and lots of money. I value for, just for the sake of my appearance, not for health, losing weight. So I'm valuing them, I'm achieving them, but since they're not ultimately meaningful, they're not putting gas in my system. And then again, something could be meaningful, but I don't value it. Like, what would be an example of something that's intrinsically meaningful? Something that we could say is meaningful. Anything. I doubt anyone could be wrong. It's just Shear's.
We're open. I was holding. Oh my God.
And in Springfield, in the dog crazy world of America where they need dogs for relationships, someone was saying how their doorbell is dogs barking. Their doorbell is dogs barking. A few dogs barking. They got this doorbell because they noticed that when their dog hears dogs barking, it will move. And if they want their dog to go outside, they press the doorbell and then the dogs bark. And then I think you imagine, like, anyway. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. And were you talking about your undergraduate, your master's? Which one? When did you feel that so strongly? It was your master's. Wow. For all those achieving their master's, so my mother was saying what we're talking about, achievement goal. So she said she worked till she got her master's, and she was of course very happy when she got her master's. And the next day she's like, what did I do all this for? Why did I push myself so hard? What was the point in all this? What was it all worth? Not to prevent anyone out there from doing what they're supposed to be doing. And how hard I am working and how much I need to do and the hours and the whatever and filling out the forms and all that stuff. And officially in the world, it's supposed to be, yeah, come on. And then when you actually achieve it, a sensitive Jew is like, all right, great. So what? Okay, good. So we have acts of kindness, mitzvahs, anything we take on to the next world. Absolutely. Is there anything else we could broaden that, which of course are part of serving God, but we don't think so. That's also, I think, intrinsically meaningful. We have mitzvahs, we have Torah, we have kindnesses, which of course is part of serving Hashem. Relationships. I think relationships also are on that list. Again, people could disagree with me, but I think that's part of how God wants us to live. And that's a truly meaningful thing. And maybe that's why, I don't know, maybe that's why in our culture, that's also something that's under attack. I was talking, whatever, I was sort of joking around talking about like, oh, I called so-and-so, and we're all like, you called them? You didn't WhatsApp? You didn't text? Like, why did you do that? Or the saddest thing when someone will tell you, I have so many Facebook friends. And your heart breaks for people that's their definition of a friend, is their Facebook friends. I don't know. Maybe you guys don't see it as much. Maybe it's a different world that I'm speaking about. But I think relationships is part of what gives meaning and that I think makes us into I think that also molds us as a person. Because if we don't have relationships, then all of our negative traits, we can hide under our pillow. It's when we're in relationships with people that we might realize we're not as perfect as we like to think we are. A little bit of that like more ugliness creeps out and we're like, really? I didn't know I was like that. So I think it's also part of the process of like self-refinement is sort of coming out as we interact with other people. We realize I'm not as selfless as I thought, or I'm more jealous than I thought, or I'm more self-centered than I thought, or you know what I'm saying? I think some of that does come out in the process of other people. So I think all relationships have real meaning. Obviously, there's relationships with a spouse, there's relationships with your parents, relationships with siblings, relationships with children. But let's say again, okay, shop and you absolutely could. You absolutely could. Thank you for whoever asked it, Ms. Anonymous, because it's not a contradiction. I'm glad you raised that question. You raised that question because it would sound the way, it would sound the way I said it, that like godliness gives you meaning and happiness. Relationships with people give you meaning and happiness. Shopping,
Can you?
no, and that's not true. And by the way, I do feel it's wonderful to look good. And I think the way we again, looking good could be very different for every person. Everybody has a different definition of what they feel when they're looking good. But look, I still remember when Esther modeled for us. You know, your outfit, your saying stuff. Yes, you did. We were all so impressed. It's a little easy thing. And we're like, you look great. And you're like, no, just throw it on. So yes, you did. I remember. Well, Shira was saying how, you know, whatever. It was good. It stuck in my brain. It's good to look good because that makes us feel good. It's good to go shopping if you're going to enjoy it. It's great to get your master's and be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish in this world because this world is requiring certain degrees for it to be accomplished. All of those things are good as long as they're a piece and they're not your definition of a day well spent, a day full of meaning. If they're there, they're fine. I mean, we didn't say anything here forbidden. We didn't say anything here wrong. But it's like, if this is how I define, if, in other words, like what we were talking about before, if I say, oh, I don't feel so happy, I'm going to go shopping, that's not a healthy road. Well, it made me feel good, like my mother said, for a few seconds. And then you just have to go again. And then you have to just go again. That's not a healthy road. Well, I don't feel so good about myself, so I'm going to get a career, so I'll have a definition and meaning and purpose. When I'm stuck home with my kids, I just feel like I'm a nothing. No, that's not a healthy road. But if you are doing what as meaningful acts, like building a relationship with your husband, building a relationship with your children, being there for your parents, being with your siblings, as Esther said, doing all the things that are eternal, all the acts of kindness, helping other people, studying Torah, doing the commandments, and it's nice to go shopping every once in a while, for sure. It's almost like, you know, in Hebrew we have two terms, ikar, tafel, ikar, tafel. What's primary, what's smaller scale, and that's the question. If we know what's the mainstay of our life, if we know what's important, then the fact that there's other things is also fine. And I appreciate that question. So we need things that are intrinsically, ultimately, and extrinsically for you meaningful. And when you do that, you're feeding yourself on the inside. And your days, you might be very tired at the end of the day, but you know it was a day purposeful, meaningful, well spent. Because if you're not doing anything good with your life, you're also very drained. But you're drained in a very not healthy way. And when you're doing things that really, really ultimately feed, you do a little shopping also, then it's really long. Yeah, so this is stuff I just wrote, but I wrote family, friends, helping someone, personal character growth. Personal character growth is the hard, good way to really feel joy on the inside, because nobody knows your flaws more than you. Nobody knows the stuff you pretend are okay, but are not, more than you. And when you overcome that, it's like the Exodus. It's Yes, Mitzrayim. It's real freedom. Shalom Bayis, that's a hard one, but also that's like such meaningful, difficult, meaningful work. Deepening your relationship with Hashem, overcoming your weaknesses and flaws. That's really meaningful stuff. That's the stuff a lot of us, it's so much easier to do more good with what we're good at than to, this is my time we're supposed to go into Parsha, which I want to connect to this. But like just this last point, we all have stuff we're good at. We all have stuff we're not good at. We want everyone to know what we're good at. We don't want to know what stuff we're not good at. And the stuff we're good at could be great, meaningful stuff. And sometimes, even within serving Hashem and within taking it with you to the next world, we still sort of have a tendency to do more of what we're good at instead of to doing the real work of polishing up what we're not good at. That's the hard work. That's like going in the trenches work. And that's sometimes the most fulfilling work. And you'll never get accolades because nobody knew about it in the first place. But it's just like this really ultimate sense of, wow. So it took me 3 years. It took me a year. It took me 6 months. But that's forever. Forever. Forever, I'm a different person because I was honest with myself. I worked at something anyone should ever know about. So therefore, no one's going to compliment me when I've changed. But I know I changed forever. And those pieces are amazing. And if you're working on those pieces, when I work on those pieces, I ask God for a lot of help. Because when you're really trying to change yourself and you've been like this for 50 some years, it's difficult. But you just keep turning to God. You do your part and you turn to God and miracles happen. So to somewhat connect this to the Parsha, somewhat not. We added this idea of having something to know about the Parsha. If your kids know nothing, then you'll impress them. If they know something, you're at least not less than them. So either way, it's a win-win. So we start off by saying what this week's Parsha is. Like, we want to start with at least the name. So it's Parsha's Eikev. So Eikev, we are in a series of 7 weeks, which actually extend to Rosh Hashanah. So believe it or not, the holidays are around the corner. I know, it's crazy, especially this year. I think they all are in September. But from the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av, which was 2 days ago, until Rosh Hashanah, there are always 7 weeks in the calendar. And those 7 weeks are called, in the Talmud, Shiva Dinechemta, which means the 7 weeks of consolement, the 7 weeks of comfort. Because we sort of turn to God and say, God, you allowed us to be so harmed. We are in such pain. What is going on? And God says, I'm going to comfort you. And he gives us 7 weeks of comfort. So for the next 7 weeks, from last Shabbos until Rosh Hashanah, every week we have a special Haftorah, but it happens every year, though we call it a special Haftorah, don't ask, all about comfort. If we have this special Haftorah about comfort, thank you so much for coming. No problem. I'm a teacher. I'm used to people walking in and walking out. When we have this special Haftorah of comfort, it also has to relate to the Parsha. So we need a Parsha of comfort for a Haftorah of comfort, which means every one of these 7 Parshas, in some way or another, is comforting us. In some way or another, connects to themes of comfort, themes of Mashiach, themes of redemption, themes of healing. Because for 7 weeks, we're supposed to be comforted. And we definitely want to be comforted, so we're really glad we're in the 7 weeks of comfort, not the other 3 weeks. So the question is, if we look at this week's Torah portion, we don't see one word. We're like, okay, God, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? We don't see any comfort. We see nothing, actually, that's very comforting. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much for bringing Nechama, what we're talking about right now. So it's actually interesting because in this week's portion, we don't find comfort, but we find something that relates to comfort. And what we find is the reason for the discomfort. Because if you know what's messing you up and you know why you're uncomfortable, you can fix it, and that's the comfort. So it's a little bit long, but we have 6 minutes, so I'm just going to give you a 6-minute overview on this idea. It's based on a verse, and the verse is that when the Jews were in the desert, and I'll say it in English, the great desert, the awesome desert, snakes, fiery snakes, scorpions, thirst, and no water. You're like, great, that doesn't ring a bell. But if we decode this verse is actually telling us all of the problems that led us to our current state. And it's going to take more than 5 minutes, so I'm just going to try to bring in a few ideas. The first idea is this desert. What's a desert? Our sages say a desert is where there's no man. Who's man? Adam, the Jew. Again, based on different biblical verses, Atem Kurim Adam. You, the Jew, are Adam, Adamel Elyon. I'll be similar to God, whatever. Many other ideas why Adam refers to the Jew. So what does it mean that we look around and we say, whoa, I'm in a great desert? What it means in brief is, you're gonna remember to tell your kids on Shabbos, a few days away. When we look around and we prioritize, this is connecting to what we're talking about until now, so I'm bringing it in. We prioritize lots of things that are devoid of godliness, devoid of Jewish values. And the more we prioritize them, the more you make something else big, the more you feel small. The more something else is consequence, the more the Jewish values, the Jewish self is less and less consequential. You just feel smaller and smaller, and it just is like, fine, so I raise a family, and I do chesed, and I daven, and I say Tehillim, but that's like nothing, because in the world that's viewed as nothing. So when you're living like that, you're like in a desert. You're that little beacon of light, but you don't feel good about yourself as that beacon of light, because the whole world's giving you messages that other things are important. If I said extrinsic and intrinsic, these things are intrinsically valuable. But if you don't value them, even as you're doing them, you could still feel bad. So here, you're doing the good stuff of life. You're raising your children, and people are like, what do you do? And you're like, I'm a housewife. And they're like, oh, like, oh. Like, what are you supposed to say at that point? Like, oh, wow, that's so cool. How'd you achieve it? And it's just, and again, now, some people don't have this problem. They know they're doing the best stuff, and they feel great about it. But there's that desert out there, that intense pressure of like, if you don't look a certain way, nothing else is valuable. If your kids don't look a certain way, nothing else is valuable. If you don't have a career, it's like this desert out there. This is literally the first step to all the other downfalls, which is so interesting. Because you're not doing anything wrong at this point. You're still like leading the good life and doing the good stuff and living as you know you're supposed to live. But because the world is giving you other messages, which the world always gives us, and we start buying into those messages, we start devaluing what we're doing. We start being even a little embarrassed about what we're doing. And that's the beginning of the whole falling, which is why I brought this in terms of what we were saying earlier, how like this is truly written in Torah. This is truly a Torah concept, that we really have to not only do the right thing, but really appreciate it and know it's the best, and know it's the best way to live, and know the more I prioritize what Esther's saying was ultimately meaningful, I am so lucky, and I am living the best life possible. I'm going to skip. There's just something else I thought was interesting. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this verse, and I got 2 minutes left. So that's the desert. The desert is when on the outside you're sort of embarrassed. When it becomes a awesome desert is even in your own home, you're sort of embarrassed. Like your kids say, oh, Ma, why do you always do that? Why do you always talk about that? What, like, you're no fun. This isn't cool. Why do you look like that, Mother? Why do you, that's like in the inside. That's in the house. Of course, none of us relate to that. Then you get so it's as we say in Hebrew, midbar there. It goes from lower to lower to lower. Feel embarrassed on the outside, feel embarrassed in your house. And then you start like thinking, I should be like everyone else. What's my problem? Everyone outside is telling me to be like everyone else. My kids in my house are telling me to be like everyone else. What's my problem? And then we have 2 different types of problems. We have the snakes and we have the scorpions. The difference between a snake and a scorpion, they're both poisonous. The poisonous snakes. Now I'm talking about the domesticated variety. A snake, it says its poison is hot. A scorpion, its poison is cold. Again, we're going from lower to lower. So we've got the snakes, and then get lower to get the scorpions. What's the difference between a snake and a scorpion? So the snake is when you say, okay, fine, I got to do something that everyone else thinks is meaningful, and that my kids think is meaningful, and that I guess really is meaningful, because what am I wasting my time on? So you start giving into the passions, the hot, the heat. This is going to excite me. This is going to make me feel good. And you start running after what we all have inside of us if we just open up the door to it, all of those passions. And that's a big problem. But it could even get worse, because worse than a snake is a scorpion. Because a scorpion isn't hot. The scorpion is cold. The scorpion's like death. And at that point, it's not the running after the good stuff, that's the wrong stuff, but the good stuff. It's you just don't care. You just don't care. And that's the coldness. That's the bite of the scorpion. And that's like so close to death when you just don't care. Well, honestly, at that point, what was, no, you don't care about anything. Because as you, in other words, if you're caring about, so that you've never been bitten by a scorpion. Exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And those people are the hardest.
Can you repeat that?
Wait, sorry, you want to repeat what Esther said? Yeah, she said something very true. She said that if you would understand this, she gave a great example in Kiruv. The people that are like fighting you and this and that, oh good, you're a fighter, awesome. It's gonna get you to fight to the right side. But the people that like, I don't care. Like, what do you do at that point? There's nothing to work with. And it's you're exactly right. And it's true for all of us. And there could be pieces, like let's say someone, let me give you an example, like just to understand that. Like the person who is all upset with her husband and he's this. And then when it gets worse, you know what happens? You just don't care. You just say, I don't care, whatever. That's what he is. I'm living my life. He's living his life. We still call ourselves married. It's convenient. And you just don't care. When you just don't care, it's really hard to work with a person that just doesn't care, because there's no movement. I don't care. I just, like if something is very painful, what we do to self-protect is we just shut it down. If you're in a very painful relationship with anyone, with a friend, and when she needs you, she's totally there. And then the next section, she's totally flown away. And then she flies back, and then she flies away, and then she flies back, and then she flies away. And each time she flies away, you just keep getting hurt. And you know what you tell yourself? I don't want to care about her anymore. Because if I don't care, I'm not going to get hurt. But as long as I care about her, it still hurts. So you just consciously stop caring. No, it's not boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. Not caring is unhealthy. But in this case, with this person, that might be the correct response. I'm not judging that specific case I gave. Maybe the best thing is not to care and be nice without caring. But that doesn't mean boundaries in a relationship. You could have a very caring relationship and you have boundaries. Boundaries of this is appropriate, this is not appropriate. Here's a space. We all need our personal space. We need time. But I still care within the boundaries. But sometimes you just don't care. So if imagine a person in a marriage, hopefully you don't know any people like this, who just don't care. Why are you still married for? Whatever. We'll get divorced after the kids all get married. So what does that mean? That means they're not snakes, they're scorpions. It's just cold, it's dead. And at that point, it's really hard to change. So this is true. I'm saying this is like the causes of our own personal inner stuff, the causes of the ultimate exile that we want to get out of. It can be misvaluing, being intimidated. That's the best word I can think of it. Intimidated by the pressures of the world, intimidated, which leads to saying, I should be like everyone else, and then opening up the snakes inside of us and the passions. Thank you so much for coming in person, and we're done right now. I'm finishing off this thought. And then it could be the coldness. And that's where that's the almost death-like state. And if anyone finds inside of themselves a piece that just says, about this piece, I don't care, that needs the most work. Unless, of course, it's something we shouldn't care, like maybe those unhealthy relationships. Anyway, I think I'm being told that we really are over, which we are. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. When are you running back, in God willing, to the Holy Land? And you're saying you have everything in